Hi everybody, we're starting our initial segment here of our Christmas light installation series. This is the first step. Is a presentation called Becoming a Christmas Light Installer. And the question we're asking here is it right for you? Is this a business that you're going to be interested in, you're going to be happy doing? Maybe you don't know a whole lot about what it's like to be a commercial installer. So hopefully in this presentation we're going to answer that for you. It's a very brief overview. It's not going to be everything you need to know from start to finish. Again, it's just a general overview to maybe give you an idea of, is this something you want to pursue? So the first question we're going to ask is, what is a professional Christmas light installer? And the answer to that question is basically you get paid to decorate. People are going to contract you to decorate their homes, their businesses, in some cases cities, um, parties and weddings as well are excellent ways to generate income for a Christmas light installer. So these are generally, that's kind of the gist of it, is you make money by putting up Christmas decorations essentially. So that's definitely the basics of what is a Christmas light installer. The question also is, who starts one? Well, basically anybody can start a Christmas light business. I will point out that lawn care providers, excellent partner for a Christmas light company. If you already have 50 or 100 lawn care accounts, that's perfect because now you already have 50 or 100 customers that you're already doing business with that trust you, know you do good work, and you already have that contact. So those are customers you can go to and say, are you interested in having Christmas decorations put up? So it gives you a huge jump start if you have a lawn care provider company. Window washers, the same idea. These are seasonal type businesses where you don't have a whole lot going on in the winter. A lot of guys are hoping that it snows so they can plow snow and things. Window washers, you don't typically wash windows in the winter, definitely on the outside of houses anyway. And it just kind of fills in that nice November, December, January, February time frame where you don't have a lot going on, and you can come in and make some extra money installing lights. Um, and also, don't be afraid to run this as a standalone business. There are many companies out there that all they do are Christmas lights, okay? So don't feel like you have to be a lawn care guy or a landscaper or have a tree trim business or the various other company to piggyback this with. Um, you very well can have a standalone business and be very successful. I think it's a little bit more challenging that way, being a standalone business, but I don't think you're going to make any less money or any more money either way. I think you're just going to have to market a little bit harder if you start from scratch as a standalone business versus if you already have a client base of service clients. But you definitely can do it as a standalone. So don't be afraid to go that route either. So why would you do this? A question that's asked a lot is why you're installing Christmas lights. It seems like a lot of work. It seems like a hassle. It's cold. It's snowy out. Things like that. The number one answer, of course, is it pays pretty well. Um, you easily, that's a question a lot of new companies ask is, how much money can I make installing Christmas lights? The easy answer is the sky's the limit, really. How hard do you want to work? And, but that's the answer for any type of business. To give you some ideas, pay-wise, you should be pulling at a minimum $100 an hour for a two-man crew. Realistically, your goal should be 150 to 200. I'm not going to sit here and tell you that you can make 100 or 200 or $300,000 a year making Christmas lights and sound like it's an easy thing to do. I know there's some other presentations out there that say that. They're there to sell you presentations. Realistically, though, I think that would be a really good target for you. Some markets, if they're crowded, and what I mean by crowded is there's 20 or 25 other commercial installers in your market, you might have to be a little bit more price conscious versus the guy that has one other competitor. in their market. So that, of course, is going to affect pricing. But later on, we're going to put together a more detailed presentation of the money in Christmas lights to help figure some of that out for you. But a good rule of thumb is $100 to $200 an hour is definitely realistic. It's an excellent add-on for winter sales. Like I said before, if you're a lawn care guy, um, especially here in the Midwest, we're done cutting the grass at the end of October. So what are you going to do November, December, and January is you hope that it snows so you can plow some snow. So if you got a nice Christmas lights, it's an excellent thing you can put in there and still plow the snow as well. And definitely keeps your guys working and generates some income for your business. Another thing that a lot of people don't think about is using a Christmas light business to grow your already established business or grow another business. Um, if you're advertising your Christmas light company and you get 5 or 6 new customers in a new subdivision and you're installing lights on their house, you ought to be asking them at the end of the season when you take down their lights if you can cut their grass in the spring. Especially if they're happy with your business, they like you, get that business, get everybody feeding off of each other and start building a nice empire of businesses. Um, so the same goes with, a snow removal company. If you're shoveling snow for somebody, or doing windows, or you do offer those businesses, already, get your new Christmas light client, get them in your lawn care, get them on your snow, wash their windows, clean their gutters, things like that. And definitely just get everybody feeding off everybody. And now you've got a customer that's paying you year round um, for services. And another reason why is at the end of the day, you spend 2 or 3 hours putting up somebody's lights, and you come back at 8, 9 o'clock at night and you look at it and it just looks fantastic. And it's just a very fulfilling feeling to know that you decorated this house, it looks beautiful, your customer's happy, you're looking around the neighborhood and it's just looks fantastic compared to the neighbor's house, and it's just something you're truly proud of. And I think if you're a business owner and run your own company, I think that's very important. I think at the end of the day, you need to step back and go, am I proud of what I'm doing? And am I happy with what I'm doing? Am I fulfilled? And I think Christmas Lights is a very easy company to be fulfilled because it's visually appealing. It's very easy to step back and you physically can see that, wow, I created this beautiful display. I think the startup costs are actually relatively low for a Christmas light company. If you already have a business that you're piggybacking this onto, you most likely already have a truck or a van that you can use for this company. If you don't, that's going to be your biggest expense. So if you don't personally already drive a truck, you're going to have to lease one or buy one. And that's going to be your biggest expense. You need something to put your ladders on. You need something to hold product and such like that. Van and truck both will work fine. Um, ladders can be a little bit expensive, but you'll need a 28 to 32 foot extension ladder. I highly recommend getting two. If you get a 28 and a 32 maybe. And the reason is the 32 might be handy in that 1 or 2 jobs where you need the extra 4 feet. But most importantly, if you're on a job and something happens to your ladder, it breaks. It quits working, and there you are halfway installing a job. It's really handy to go back to your truck, pull the 32 off, and finish the job instead of having to worry about going to buy another ladder or going back to the warehouse and getting your spare ladder. So it's very handy to have 2 extension ladders. A step ladder is handy for those nice little 1 or 2 step jobs, hanging wreaths over doors or doing low end of bushes. A nice folding ladder is key. I like the little giant ladders. Warner makes a nice all-in-one folding ladder. They fold into all sorts of different shapes and sizes. You'll find that no 2 jobs are the same. So having a nice workhorse ladder like a little giant or one of the Warner makes a similar thing that I think is a little bit cheaper, but the same idea. I think you'll be really happy and get a lot of use out of that. So ladders, they're going to be fairly expensive. You're going to, spend a couple $100 for per extension ladder, and probably a couple $100 for your folding ladder. And the next on our list, of course, is poles. You'll want several extension poles. You're going to want a 12, an 18, and 24 foot painter's pole. They're typically fiberglass. And these extension poles are used mainly for putting lights in trees. So you can do it from the ground. You can decorate evergreen trees and pine trees and things right from the comfort of the ground using these extension poles. And they're typically, I think the 24 footers might run about $40 or $50, and then the shorter ones are a little bit cheaper. And excellent to have a nice range of sizes, and have multiple poles so you can get a couple guys working on things as well. So definitely the top three things are your most important things. The tools, you're going to need some wire cutters for cutting lights. You're going to need, the pliers, a drill, a glue gun. We'll go in a little bit detailed on another video in detail exactly what a good starter kit is to have for Christmas light installing toolbox. Insurance. I think a lot of guys make the mistake assuming that because they have a lawn care company and they have a liability insurance that it's okay to go install Christmas lights. You definitely are going to want to call your insurance agent and ask that question. I would almost guarantee that you would be surprised at the answer, that you're going to have to pay for some more insurance, or your lawn care company is insured for cutting grass and throwing stones through windows, not climbing up on roofs and putting electrical appliances on people's homes and businesses. So typically you're going to have some sort of electrician's rider on that, even though you're not an electrician. And in most states that I know of, you don't have to be an electrician to do this because you're not actually creating any circuits or anything. But make sure you call that insurance agent and make sure that you're covered. The last thing you want to do is drop your ladder through somebody's fancy $2,000 window and find out your insurance isn't going to cover it because you're supposed to be cutting grass, not putting Christmas lights up. So definitely make that call. I think your insurance is going to most likely go up, and again, to put a number on it's hard. I will tell you that in the Midwest, it's probably about double for a Christmas light install company. It's going to double your insurance to have that rider on there. But liability insurance here is relatively cheap, but definitely check into that. And the other startup question you have is marketing. You're going to want to build yourself a website. Postcards for mailings, flyers, door hangers, things like that. You're going to want to sit down and figure out how much money you have for marketing. Without marketing, you have no way to get customers to call you, which means you're not going to give any quotes out. You're not going to get any new business. And so it's all going to start with your marketing once you get going in your business. So the overall business process, what do you do as a Christmas light installer, is you're going to market. Like I said before, if you're not marketing, there's no way customers know how to find you. And if you don't have customers finding you, you're not making any money. So you need to get out there, you're going to market. And after you get some marketing, you're going to get some phone calls. And you're going to turn those phone calls into quotes. You're going to go out and do a quote. And you're either going to get the job or you're not. If you get the job, you're going to do the installation. And during the season, you're going to maintain that display. And at the end of the season, you're going to remove it and box it up and store it. So that's basically the gist of what do you do as a Christmas light installer is basically summed up in these 5 points right here. So going into a little more detail, marketing, the number one thing that I beg people to do is to get a website, okay? If you're a Christmas light installer in Detroit, your customers, the first thing they're going to do is get on the internet and type into Google, Christmas light installer in Detroit. So you need to make sure your website pops up on their screen. So get a hold of your buddy that designs websites. Maybe you know how to. Grab a college student looking for a project. All inexpensive ways to get a website. Get it up and running. Get it focused on your market. You have to make sure that when people search for, Detroit Christmas lights, that your website pops up. They can click on it and they can email you or call you. I will tell you that this is the way of the future. A lot of the guys that have been in this business for a long time are going to tell you to send out postcards, send out flyers, send out mailers, and keep hammering it. That works, but I will tell you in this day and age, it's so much easier and so much faster for me to get a qualified customer through a website, and it's so much faster for customers to just go to the internet and fill out a form than to pull out the yellow book and hope somebody mails them something. So get a website. Long term, the majority of your business is going to end up being generated through there. The other part of marketing is to reach out past customers. If you're a lawn care guy and you have 100 lawns you're cutting all summer, by fall you better go to those customers and hand them a flyer that says, hey, we install Christmas lights as well. Because that's easy business. They already trust you. They're already doing business with you. It doesn't cost you anything to acquire that customer. Moving on, mailers and door hangers. A lot of people will push postcards. I think postcard companies push postcards more. I think those get thrown out more. I think you're going to have a lot less, acquisition rate doing postcards than if you actually wrote a letter. So the work is higher. You can go to postcard companies and get mailing addresses for various neighborhoods, and they're going to mail out a bunch of postcards that say current resident on them. What I found is more effective is go and do some database searching, get real names and addresses, write them a letter with your company logo and name as the return address, and put a nice flyer in there. That forces them to open that letter. They're more likely to open up that letter personally addressed to them than they are to see something that says current resident and has a picture of a house with lights on it. That's just going to get thrown out way more often. So some little trick to think about that. It's more work up front to do the letter thing, but I think you're going to get more successful. Door hangers, again, be careful with door hangers. In a lot of cities, that's actually considered littering, so make sure you know your local regulations on that. But door hangers, it puts it in their hand. I think that's a little bit more effective than mailing a postcard, because they have to pick it off their front door and actually look at it. So you'll be a little bit more effective there. I think talking to business owners is an excellent way. I think if you have a local McDonald's, you walk in and ask to speak to the manager and pitch your business to him and show him the value of decorating his business for the holidays and how it's going to bring him more customers. That McDonald's might be sitting next to a Burger King, and you walk in there and say, hey, Burger King's not going to decorate their house. Let's, these nice trees and bushes in front of your McDonald's, let's light them up really spectacular and make people come eat here, so they can stare out the front of your restaurant at these beautiful trees. So there's, some marketing of going and knocking on doors and talking to people, especially on the business side of it. It's easy. It doesn't cost you anything but your time, and you get to meet face to face with your customer right on the spot. Another option is local trade shows. I caution you on these. These can actually cost a fair bit of money in some cases. And a lot of cases on home shows and builder shows and things like that, you get a good crowd, but the problem is a lot of people are going there to kill a Saturday. Meaning that they want to go look at all the cool new toys in the industry, but they don't have any money to buy them. So I don't think you have as focused of a crowd as you would like at a local trade show. I wouldn't rule them out. Maybe as your company gets bigger and expands, or maybe you're touting your lawn care, window washing business, or gutter business, or anything like that, and then you tag on, oh, we also do Christmas lights. That can be helpful as well in the trade shows. But to set up at a trade show is just a Christmas light business, I think you're going to be a little disappointed on the lack of interest. I think you're going to hand out a lot of cards and flyers and not get a good callback on that effort. Quotes is the next step. Number one, guys, be professional. I will tell you that if you knock on the door of a $500,000 house and give them a quote, and you're wearing a dirty jacket and holey jeans and you haven't washed your hair in 2 days, they're going to look at you and be really skeptical if you're the right guy for the job. So make sure when you do these quotes, you show up, you look professional, right? You are your company. In most cases in the Christmas light business, the one doing the quotes, unless you're a really big company, is typically the owner, so you are your company. Make sure you dress the part, okay? If you're showing up and asking people to spend $1,000 or $1,500 to decorate their house, make sure you look nice. Wear some khakis, put on a nice leather coat, and be clean shaven, and just have everything be professional. The second thing is be honest. If you can't do something that your customer asks, tell them. I think a lot of guys fall into this trap where they call me up and they're like, well, I told my customer that they have a 3.5-story house and I told them I could do the roof line on it. Well, how do I do it? And the answer is you got to find a way to reach the 4 stories. So you're either getting a boom lift or hoping a 40-foot ladder reaches it. And if you don't have those things or those abilities to get those things, or you didn't bid that into your estimate, the right thing to do there is you should have been honest with your customer and said, I just can't do that. And there's nothing wrong with that. You can't win all the bids. And I think being honest up front, you'll be happier in the long run. Same thing on design things. You'll get customers that'll come out and they'll want hot pink lights and mixed with orange. That might be a good point when you're quoting this job to question that and maybe say, hey, I don't think this is going to look very good. Maybe we want to do something else instead. Because I'll tell you what happens is if you let the customer do something like that, and again, this is very rarely happens, you're going to install a job, it's going to look awful. All the neighbors are going to tell that customer how awful it looks. They're going to call you and say you did an awful job putting up your lights, even though they picked a design. So that means you're going to go back on your dime, tear it down, and put something else up that looks nice. So being honest up front is always a good idea. Being clear is good. Making sure everybody's on the same page. Probably the best way to make sure everyone's on the same page and being clear is get everything in writing. Get a contract, get a quote, get everybody to sign it. The basic says this is exactly what we're going to do and how we're going to do it. Because what will happen is you'll get a lot of he said, she said situations. You said you'd install the roof line and they said, no, we agreed to the roof line and the bushes. Or, we agreed to install the lights and remove them and store them, and maybe you rented them the product and they'll think that they bought the product. There's a ton of situations of things that'll come up. So be clear, get it in writing, and make sure everybody's on the same page. The next thing on the quotes is give a price on the spot. Don't hem and haw over it. Don't say you got to take it, back to the office and think about it, and you got to do some math on it, and you got to call and get pricing on products and things like that. Don't do that, okay? Get them a price on the spot. So you have to be prepared when you come into this quote, because what will happen is they probably called 2 or 3 people to give them a quote. The other 2 guys are giving them a price on the spot. One of those guys is going to get a signed contract on the spot while you're still trying to calculate, a price for them. So be prepared. Know how much things cost. Know what's available before you even walk in their front door, so you can give them a actual price right on the spot. Because a lot of times, if you give them a quote on the spot, they'll write you a check. And you want to check. And the last thing on the quote is show your value. You're going to sticker shock a lot of people, okay? You're going to go in and tell them it's going to cost $1,000 or $1,500 to decorate their, their large home or business, and that's going to be sticker shock to a lot of people. And so that's where you got to put your salesman hat on and really show your value. Show them what you're getting. Show them that your product is really high end. Show them that your warranty is really good. Show them why you're better than your competitors. Show them why your business altogether is fantastic. Because it's going to be all about value, especially in this day and age where people are working on coming up with ways to generate extra income. You're going to bid $1,000 on a job and have a guy come in behind you and bid the same job for $600. So you need to work on showing your value and why they're better off spending $1,000 on you versus $600. So The installation part, be prepared. There's nothing more embarrassing to a Christmas light installer than having your customer watch you run around like a chicken with your head cut off, and taking more than the allotted time to install the display. If you show up and you forgot lights, or you didn't have enough lights, or you don't have enough extension cords or plugs or whatever the things can be, and you're spending half your day chasing things down, I might fire you if I'm your customer. So be prepared, have a plan, know every detail on the install job that you quoted, and make sure you have extra lights, extra parts, extra tools, and just make sure you're over prepared for the job. So that way everything goes smoothly, you look professional, and your customer goes and tells their 3 friends about how great and professional you looked. The second thing, of course, is be careful. Guys, this is not necessarily the safest job. You're going to be high up on ladders. You're potentially going to be climbing in trees. You're going to be working with, electrical wiring and things like that. Be extra, extra careful on that aspect. All right, it's not worth falling off a ladder or falling off a roof or out of a tree or anything, for rushing a job through, or working in the snow or working in the rain or anything like that. It's just not worth it. And then the second aspect of being careful is also be careful with your customers' stuff. Taking some time and extra precautions means you don't drop a ladder through a window, or you don't break a big branch off a tree, or damage a bush, or crunch a gutter or something like that. I mean, all those things, are important, both to your safety and both to saving you money on having to repair your customer's house. And then lastly, it's be perfect. They're paying you a lot of money, and this always blows my mind when I look at other pictures from other installers, and it just looks like not any better than what the homeowner could do. So if you're going to charge for a premium service and charge a premium price for it, make sure it looks premium. If that means practice on your house, practice on your family members' houses, going back and fixing a job because you're not happy with it, just make sure it's perfect, because your install job will be your business card. That's what you'll be showing other new customers you're trying to get, is pictures of your old jobs and saying, this is what I can do, and this is why it costs $1,000, is because we're perfect, and everything looks fantastic. You're going to maintain, and basically what this means is if there's any issues after you install it and before you remove them at the end of the season, is you're going to fix them quickly. You're going to take care of that. I highly recommend when you bid a job that you guarantee the whole display for the whole season. That goes back to showing value. It's basically give your customers that worry free. Hey, you're going to write me a check. Everything's going to be taken care of no matter what. A prime example would be if a customer's having a party and a tree quits working that's lit and they need it fixed within 2 hours, you better do your best to make that fixed in 2 hours so she can tell everybody at her party how great of a company you are because you made that happen. But a good rule of thumb on maintenance is if you can do it within 24 hours, it's usually pretty reasonable. So something to keep in mind if you're setting up a business is make sure that you can do that. And then in here I put natural versus unnatural causes. That's something that goes back to putting your contracts into writing and things. You're going to want to define what do you cover as part of maintenance. If the customer comes out, and this has happened before, where a customer comes out and decides to rewire the display because he thought he could do a better job and then he messes it up, you probably shouldn't have to pay for your time to come back and fix it because he went out and messed with it. Their dog chewed up wire, things like that's another what I would call unnatural causes that you shouldn't have to cover. And then back to maintenance too. If you do it right the first time, you don't have to go back and fix it. Your ultimate goal has to be installing it well, so you don't have to go back and see that customer until you take the lights down in January. And that's where you make your money in this business, is not having to go back and fix things, because time is definitely money. So really focus on doing quality work the first time and not making mistakes the first time, you spend an extra 10 or 15 minutes walking back through a job after you installed it and checking everything. That might save you an hour or two down the road. Removal. Be careful and be respectful. Okay, there's really no need to go remove Christmas lights in January in the middle of an ice storm or a snowstorm. That's not safe. Um, it's just not worth it. Again, being careful when you're tearing down the lights. Be careful of your customer's property. There's bushes and plants under the snow. Again, don't drop. Take the extra time to not beat up gutters and not drop things through the windows. And your product. If you're taking down lights, try to be a little careful with them, because those lights can be your asset in some cases. You don't want to come back the following year and spend an hour trying to fix the lights that you beat up or crushed or whatever when you tore them down too roughly. Sooner is better on removal. The less time the lights are installed, the longer they'll last. Basically, the sun's not going to be beating down on them, eating away the coating on the wires and things like that. The weather's not going to get to them. So the sooner you can get them down, try to get them down end of January, middle of February. You want them down quickly just for the longevity of it. And then, of course, you don't want your customers to have lights up in March and April and things like that, because it gets a little tacky when people's Christmas lights are still up. And on the removal part, it's so important to label. When you take that roof line down and you have 3 sections, there's nothing more frustrating than the following year. You come to that job, you unbox everything, and you have no idea where anything goes. You can save yourself hours of time the following year on rehanging these lights if everything's just labeled. Get some tape, put it on the plug end of the light, and say, this goes on the left side of the roof. Just little notes like that will just save you hours of time and frustration installing lights, knowing where they go. And on a removal, store or not to store, I would highly recommend you store your customers' lights. But if you're starting a company, you need to make sure you have a place to put them. Plastic tubs work really well. You can fit a lot of, most displays will fit in 1 or 2 18-gallon plastic tubs, and they can stack 4 or 5 high, which is nice, so they don't take up an enormous amount of room. But you still need to make sure that if you're going to start this company, you have a place to put everything. You have a place to put all your ladders, all your tools, and then of course your customers' lights. You can do this business and have your customers store their own lights. I don't recommend it because you lose control. It's a good way to have a customer hire somebody else the following year. It's also a good way to have your customer not store things properly or damage things or lose things. And it can cause a bit of a headache. So keeping everything in control and storing them, I highly recommend it, but that's something when you start, you do need to make sure you have a place to store everything. So now you've removed everything, and now it's the off season. You always still want to think about your Christmas light business year round. There's people that in June and July will close jobs already because people want to make sure that they're on your schedule. That's not unheard of. Stay in contact with your customers. A great idea is at the end of the season, maybe April, May, June timeframe, you send a nice letter to your customers and say, hey, thank you for being our customer. I hope you enjoyed your Christmas light display. If you have any friends that are interested, please give them my card. And it's just a great way to stay in contact. Or maybe you send a newsletter out for your whole company that says, hey, we had a great Christmas light season, and by the way, we do lawn thatching and fertilizing and things like that, and build that brand for your whole company and stay in contact with your customers. And that's a great way to get them to refer you, as well as have them hire you to do other things. Always be thinking about your business. As a small business owner, you're the guy. It's all about you. So you always have to be thinking about, how can I get new business? How can I make my job easier? How can you get products easier? How can you get your staff lined up? How can you make your staff better? These are all things in the off season that are, you can look back at lessons learned and go, you know what? I really had trouble installing roof lines. How can I improve that process so I can do them quicker? Because on a roof line, you might be charging them by the foot. if it takes you 2 hours or 4 hours, you're still getting paid the same. So if you can figure out ways to get that same result in 2 hours, that's in your advantage of making more money. So that's always the things that I would highly recommend is don't turn your brain off on Christmas lights in the summer. It's a great time to retool. It's a great time to talk to guys and learn about the business, because nobody's busy with their Christmas light business in July. So it's a great way to work on those things. So if this is something you're interested in, if I didn't scare you off, I'm hoping this was a helpful presentation to kind of give new folks that are interested in starting a Christmas light business or installing a business kind of an idea of what's involved. We're going to put together more detailed videos of following this one to kind of split out all these sections into more detail. How can we set up your business better? How can you market better? How can you do good quotes? And just try to step people through kind of what we would do to set this up. And this is based on past experiences, of course. You're always welcome to call and email us with any questions. I'm happy to talk Christmas lights with anybody 12 months out of the year. I've listed our website here, Wholesale Holiday Lights. It does have our full product selection on there. If you don't have a wholesale account and you're interested in one, sign one up. And again, feel free to call us or email us with any questions, and we're here to help and hope that if you're interested in starting a business, don't be afraid to ask others in the business. I will say out of Christmas light installations is definitely a pretty friendly crowd, so lots of help around, so don't be shy.